Welcome to another Activating Abundance episode. And today I am going to be talking about activating abundance with knowing what you love. And this episode was inspired once again by one of my students, a different student, because of the work they're going through and some of the what's coming up during our coaching sessions. I find very valuable it's something lots of people struggle with. So I thought it's just stuff worth sharing. So I'm going to share it. But I also got a sign from the universe because there was an excerpt in my Simple Abundance book that was related. And I thought, this is something, this is, I love it when the universe sends me messages that further confirm my thoughts. Like I was thinking about doing an episode on that. I was actually tossing around a couple different ideas. And then I saw that excerpt and I was like, that's it. That's what the universe wants me to share. And if you're tuning in from my YouTube channel or on my YouTube channel, you'll notice that I have added some new home decor in my studio, and I actually match it. I can't believe I match it. That was not planned, but that was his idea because my table behind me is too small. And so it's not wide enough that it shows stuff. And so there was this like big open area. And so I thought, my husband said, just put a plant in there. But I don't really keep live plants because I can't keep live plants alive. So I had this artificial plant. So I now it looks much better in the background. And I have this green, I match in green. I don't wear green that often, but I was like, oh, looks kind of matchy. Okay, so let's get to the episode. Enough about my home studio. So this episode, as I said, was inspired by a coaching session I had this past week. The module that we we're going through this past week was about setting goals, and not like goals like you think of goals. I call them wishes. So they're really, it's an opportunity to dream. A lot of my students come in and they just have not dreamed. They haven't had dreams. That was me, my old me. I was too busy to ever dream. And so I didn't know what I wanted. So this is really important. We need to have dreams. We need to use our imagination and think about a future that we would love to have. And so they have to come up with a lot of wishes. They have to come up with 50 of them. And so as she was going through the exercise, she was struggling with coming up with things. And one of the things she said is it feels like a to-do list, and it's all doable. It's things I was going to do anyways. So she is not accessing that part of her brain that is imaginative, that is creative. And that's what happens when we get stuck in these roles and these behaviors that aren't helping us. So one of the things we were talking about is I was giving her some suggestions as to what she could do differently. And a lot of the things that we have to do to break the habits are things that don't come easy to us. And so it's hard. It's hard to do. But then once you start to get results, then you want to do more. And so you just have to kind of, maybe a good analogy is you just got to pull the Band-Aid off and do the hard stuff. And just like when I was talking about change last week, change is hard at first, but it gets easier. And so this is the same thing as breaking a bad habit. You just have to commit that you want to break it and you want to change things. So the other thing that she was having trouble with, which is kind of related, and I have seen this before in a student, which actually broke through and she had major results. So I know it's possible. I have evidence of this working. And so she was not able to access, and the student was saying, I can't access memories, because I had taken them through another exercise where they have to go back in time. And she was having trouble thinking of anything in long periods, like a decade of her childhood. And so that means that there's blocks there for some reason. And in her case, we also go through this. I should probably give you a little bit more background on what we do. So they also go through, my students, a personality typing session with Alex Paulos. I've had him on the podcast before, and I'll link it up in the show notes so you can hear it if you haven't heard the episode. I also reran it in January, so you could scroll back to like the January episodes, and I reran the original episode because it was so valuable. And he's invented a way in which to read people, and he can tell what your inborn personality is, meaning the personality that you were born with, and that you're here to live that, who that person is. So that person has desires, that person has dreams, that person has characteristics, personality traits. And so they learn a lot in this session. It's quite valuable. And she learned, and it can be described as living authentically or inauthentically. And by inauthentic, I don't mean that you're not a kind you think you're authentic, you think, or inauthentic, you think you're like deliberately being, not yourself. But what happens is we fall into these patterns based on trying to please others or trying to be of value, and what we give people, what we think they want, and we ignore what is vital to us. And so oftentimes this happens to please a parent, or if you're in a role as a child where you're given a lot of responsibility really early, and that was in her case. She was given a lot of responsibility as a very young child, and she was the oldest of 3 siblings. And so she had to kind of be help, and she had to be, create structure in her home for, she couldn't really be a kid, right? Because she had all this responsibility. And so her inborn personality is actually opposite of that. Her inborn personality is not somebody, there are people who their inborn personality is a more rigid, more structured, more liking real clear guidelines and liking plans, and wanting an agenda, and being very direct in their speak. And there's all these kind of really, there's people that's who they're meant to be. And then there's people that they just want to be spontaneous, and they want to go with the flow, and they want to be casual, and they're what Alex refers to as wavy. They're just softer in their approach. And so she was being forced by her environment and expectations. And again, this is not an insult or a criticism of our parents, because they didn't even know. And in some cases, it's just a fact of, what happens in your life. Your one of your parents leaves, and this just happens, and it's not something that your mother or your father did deliberately, and they didn't even know. We didn't have this information when we were growing up. So she has lived this inauthentic role or personality. She's been living who she's not for so long, she doesn't know who she is really. She's lost who she is. And so she has to find her way back. And so that's what the work is. And it can be very emotional, and it can be very draining to do it, but it is so worth it if you do it. I already have one student who is like a completely different person, and they'll just like, we've been together, I think 4 weeks now. So, but everybody's at their own pace, and everybody's at a different place when they start. And so what I had suggested to her to do to open up that connection to who she really is, because that's what you have to do. You have to really find out and start to connect with that inner voice. because we're shut off from that inner voice. We're so busy in our logical mind and what we're trying to get accomplished and that we think is right. And this is, when we're living inauthentically like that, that's conditioned. We've been conditioned. It's like almost being brainwashed, being, abducted by kidnappers and living with them for, 40 years. So, so that's very, very much what it's like. So I suggested two things to her in order to like connect with that imagination and get the kind of her creative juices flowing. So one suggestion, and I've said this before, if you've been at any of my free trainings, you need to get into the silence. So you need to get quiet. So whether that's meditation or meditation is usually a really great thing to do. There's other things that you can do. Breath work. I mean, that's getting quiet as well, but it's also breathing. So, but you need to get out of the doing. You need to stop the busy, fast pace. You need to stop the to-do list, get off the hamster wheel of life that you're living and out of the norm. And so kind of like, you just need to kind of pattern interrupt yourself. So I suggested that she just get quiet, spend time in silence every day, and she can go on walks. She can take a bath. She can just sit on the sofa, listen to some quiet music, and sit with her thoughts. So that's one thing. And the thing of it that you have to be careful of is you want to clear your head from the thoughts of what do I have to do tomorrow, or what did I not do yesterday? And you're like thinking about the past and how you maybe had handled a conversation or something like that might come to your mind. Or a lot of times when I try to sit and be still, it's like my mind goes to ideas or like ideas like, and I need to get this done, and how can I get this done, and that, and like, so I'm trying to like organize my day in my head. And so, but what you want to do is just sit with your feelings. You just want to clear your mind of any past or future, get present. So you just want to feel and breathe, just slowly in and out. It's one of the ones that I listen to, Calm. She has you breathe in on to a count of 4 and then breathe out, hold for a count of 4 and then breathe out for, so it's like these 4 counts. And so, and then if you just think about that, if you're just counting and you're counting your breaths and concentrating on that, you'd be surprised how much your mind gets distracted from all the like past and present things and to-do lists. So just sit and count your breath and just think about how you feel in the moment. Just check in with the emotions that you're feeling. So getting quiet is the one thing to do, and start a regular daily practice to do that. And then after you're done with your session, I say 10 minutes minimum. And if you can do 20 minutes, better. And if you can do it more than once a day, because if you're in this stuck place, the faster, believe it or not, the fastest way to get out of it is not by doing more lessons or exercises and trying to force it. It's stepping away from that work and being quiet, doing nothing. So that is the answer. And so the other thing is that it's very helpful to set an intention before you do a meditation. Like you're basically asking your subconscious for help. And so I've done that before a breathwork session, and I've had amazing universal downloads from that. And then when you're done, journal. When you're done, pick up a piece of paper and just write down what your experience was, what came up, what you thought, what popped into your head. Usually things that they'll just pop for no reason into your head. And you're like, what was that? And so getting quiet, but also being intentional with that silence and documenting it. So it's more than just getting quiet that would really be beneficial. And then the other suggestion, and I already said this, ask your subconscious for help, but ask for help also before you go to bed at night. A lot of people say, I don't dream. I have no dreams. Well, newsflash, you do dream. You dream every night. We go to a place that is not on this earth when in our dreams. And our dreams, if we are open to remembering them, if we aren't just determined to say I don't dream, because what are you doing when you say I can't? You're just blocking that connection. But if you ask for help before you go to bed, and I've had many students do this and it works, and then they wake up the next morning, they will likely have an answer. And I have read that it will eventually come, and it might not be the first night, it might not be the second night, but usually within 3 days, if you go to bed every night asking for help, you will remember. And if you get a dream and it's in the middle of the night, I highly recommend that you get up and write it down, because you will forget it. So there's probably been times where you've remembered a dream and then you go back to sleep and you wake up and you don't remember it, or you remember a lot less details. It's very vivid when you first wake up. But our dreams are signs, and they're often not necessarily clear, but you can, I've Googled my dreams before. So you can Google what you dreamed about, and there's a wealth of information out there. Googling your dreams, and or just like really sitting with them, and you'd be surprised how often I have woken up, had my dream, and really went through it and thought, oh my gosh, I get it now. I get it. I just sat with it for a while and thought about it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense, because that's what that meant. So it's usually doesn't come to us exactly in the way, like if you're asking for somebody to come to you, then they come in a different form. Or one example, I'll just give you an example that I had, is I was getting ready to do my first launch of my program, and I had a dream that I was in an airplane crash, and I only really connected the dots because my coach had a similar dream, but it was about an airplane crash. And I'm so glad that I had his perspective, because I was in an airplane crash, but I was on the field. It was a field, and it was a field of destruction, fires, dead bodies, suitcases all opened up, and things all over the place. And I had not one single scratch on me. I stood up in the field. I looked around, obviously dazed, right? And I walked away, perfectly fine. And what I realized that was a metaphor for is that I was getting ready to do a launch, and there was so much fear that I would fail, that I would die, that I would crash and burn. And what it told me is that what my subconscious was telling me, Lori, it's going to be perfectly fine. Yeah, it might be a little scary, but you're going to be A-okay. And that was such a gift to realize that. And that was a dream. And I had a very successful launch, that first launch. And I think it's because that dream reduced the fear that I had going into it. So dreams can be very informative. So the thing that I wanted to say too, and I'm going to end with reading this excerpt, because it was crazy how this excerpt from the Simple Abundance book that I love was the thing that I read right after I had the idea, maybe I should talk about this on my next podcast. So you just wait. It's amazing. But the last thing that I want to make a point out of, when you ask, in terms of these two suggestions, like getting quiet and asking for help, is you want to make sure that you're not cutting off the ability for that information to flow. And the way that can happen is when you use words like, I don't know, or I can't, I don't know how. Those kind of things just basically, they don't open up the opportunity for you to attract the information. Because if you know the whole thing that I talk about in terms of we attract what we think, when you say I don't know, you're going to attract nothing because you don't know, right? And that's not what you want. You want to know. You want to know. So you just have to replace those words, that verbiage. You have to just replace it with, I'm open to the answers. It is unfolding for me, and I am here to receive it. You have to believe that it's there, that the information is inside of you. Your soul is all knowing, and it will provide the information to you. It will access that information. So if you believe that you are all knowing, and that is true, that is a fact. We are all knowing. We have limitless potential. We are all knowing, but our human brain blocks us off from the knowing. And so it's there for the taking. And just know that you can use these tools, either getting quiet or asking for help, or in combination. I would say use them both, and you can access that information. Just get out of the busy mind and get present and start to just listen. And at first, it'll feel really weird because it's not a normal thing that you've been doing. It's not a habit that you have been practicing. But as you practice it more, and as you start to get results, and as you start to get nuggets and things start to become clearer, I know that in the past, the student that I had that had blocks, she had, like, most of her childhood was, she could not remember anything, not even something. And she stepped away from the work, and it came before the end of the time we were together. So, which was probably 6 or 8 weeks, or even less, because, like I said, this is, we're on module 4. So, although I think that stuff's in module 3, but anyways, neither here nor there. But just try that. And I want to read to you a little excerpt that was from the Simple Abundance book, and I'm behind because I went to Florida and I didn't take it's a big, huge book. And I just didn't want to lug it with me. So I downloaded it onto my Kindle, but then I didn't keep up. So I got home and I was like, I have a bunch of February excerpts to read. And this is what I read right after I gave that student some direction on how to access her imagination and her creativity. And this excerpt, I'm going to read it straight out because it's crazy good. And I just don't want to paraphrase it. It's about 5 paragraphs. So bear with me. It is called Knowing What You Love. And if you think about it, that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to figure out what her dreams are. She's trying to figure out what she would love to do. She's trying to figure out who she really is, and what that person would love to do. And so that's really what this is all about. So here we go. Quote, "It should be straightforward, this knowing what we love, but it seldom is. After decades of letting other people influence us, social media, the magazines, our mothers, our sisters, our friends. We're going to have to go cold turkey. The only opinion that counts from now on is your own. This week, try an experiment. Plan to go on a browse in a home furnishings and decorative accessory shop. Go somewhere you've never been before so that you're looking at everything with fresh eyes. What startles you, calls to you, excites you? Write it down in a small spiral notebook or on your phone so you can keep it in your purse. Is it a fragrance in the shop or the shape of a teapot? Is it the music that you've never heard before? The colors of a hooked rug? The textures in an exquisite flower arrangement? You'll know what you love the moment you see it. It's that familiar wow reaction. Trust the impulse. Then next week, on another excursion, go window shopping, not to buy, at a new to you fashion boutique. You know, that place that always intrigues you, but you stay away from because it's too expensive. The spring collection should be on display now. See what's new. See what's you. Your spirit perks up at the sight of a goldenrod linen blazer. So why are you always dressed in black? A fabulous flowered Georgette pleated skirt and tunic top wows you, but you always wear jeans because they're more practical. Maybe, just maybe, feeling gorgeous outweighs practicality. Be open to authentic aspirations. Remember, this is the year for asking questions. The most essential one we can ask is, what is it I truly love? Be patient. We're not going to overhaul our lives, our work, our homes, or our wardrobes in a week. Trust that your authentic life will unfold naturally and with grace. End quote. So I thought it was so great because she gave a couple of ideas of how you can spur those impulses of what you might really love by doing something different and out of the ordinary. Now, maybe a fashion boutique isn't the first place you would go, but it's a great idea. And if you think of some other place, but the whole window shopping and the going into home decor, because I think of a home decor store as having so many different things in it. So wander the aisles. I think of Home Goods, and it's got groceries, it's got furniture, it's got pillows, it's got dog things, it's got knickknacks and planners, which I love. So it's got all different kinds of things. But I also love, and what really struck me and I highlighted is, remember, this is a year for asking questions. And so one of my suggestions was ask for help. So, and that's ask questions, be curious. So when you ask for help, be specific about what it is. So always ask questions, be in the wonder of it all. So if you, instead of, I don't know, that's interesting. Let me ask my subconscious. I'll get back to you. How about that one? Try that one on. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helped you. If you're somebody who is feeling like you're not creative, you don't dream, you are stuck in some way where you're just not feeling lit up, it's likely that you don't really know what you love. And this is a good way to start. Okay. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.